Hello and welcome to Sentences, a writing podcast. And for our next webinar, we discuss the value of reading. And we also wanted to give tips on how to get your kids into reading. Now, you may be asking, I thought this was a writing podcast. What does reading have to do with it? And my answer is a lot. Because in our experience, in order to be good writers, your kids have to be good readers as well. So enjoy this webinar recording along with Margaret Spilman, a published author who also happens to work at Sentence Center, and Maia Baluyut, a guest high school junior. We talk about how to get your kids into reading. Enjoy! Welcome everyone to our webinar for tonight, our October webinar. We've done about 2 webinars in the summer and in the fall, and this is our third. And we love this topic. This is one of our favorite topics. We talk about it with each other, Miss Margaret and I, with our students. And just because we're bookworms ourselves, we love talking about it. And we also want to share with you some tips and strategies for you to work with your kids. And let's keep in mind that this is an interactive. As you can see, we're a very small group. As usual, a number of parents signed up, and we expect them hopefully to come in later on. But for now, it's just the 5 of us. So let's keep this as interactive. Let's keep it more of a dialogue rather than us just talking to you. So feel free to ask any questions. You can ask in the chat. You can turn on your camera if you want, and you can engage with us in any of the topics or any of the questions that we have. But before anything else, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Chino Baluyut, and I run Sentence Center here at Burlingame. But we are 100% virtual, so we can reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. And we like I said, I personally, as an educator, I've been teaching for over 25 years. I teach writing. I teach a little bit of I was a language arts teacher, so I also taught reading, and it's something that's close to my heart, which is why I love talking about it. And over to my left, I don't know what orientation you guys are seeing it in your Zoom, is the awesome Miss Margaret. And I'll have her introduce herself.
So hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Spilman, and I am here in Alameda, what I like to call Oakland's fanny pack. And I am also a teacher, but I'm also a writer. So I am very invested in kids reading because I need them to read my stuff. I need them to read my work. I need them to grow up to be wonderful, amazing readers so they can support this amazing writing community here. And we really are lucky here in the Bay Area to just have an amazing, vibrant literary community that we're excited to bring all of our students into as we teach them to love language. So I can see that Mr. Chino is helping some parents get into the meeting right now. So I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about why reading is so vital. And you're here, so you already have an idea of why it's so important to your children, to their lives. It's not only something that is crucial at school, just to get them through school, but it's something that will inform how they become learners and how they become interpreters of the world around them. There are some pretty sad statistics out there of how many books adults read once they get out of school, once they're no longer forced to read by parents or teachers. So that's why it's even more important to cultivate a love of learning, not just a practice of reading, a love of reading, not just a practice of reading, so that it can stay with them lifelong and then inform not only their schoolwork, but their writing, The only way to learn how to write effectively is to learn how to read. We learn to write by learning how to read. And it also gives an alternative pastime to things like Minecraft or Fortnite or Roblox or all of the things therein. And amazingly, you don't have to keep buying downloadable content to keep going with all the books. You don't have to keep buying Robux. You can just enter this amazing magical world of your choosing. And even more than that, it can connect them to other people, whether people they've never met whose stories they're getting to read, or you as a parent learning books that you love, things that you want to share with them or their friends. It's wonderful when we're teaching to have a student bring up a book that they love and then see the rest of the class have their eyes light up and go, me too, me too. And suddenly they all have this connection because they've all shared this book. So there's some of the reasons why this is such a vital skill. It's not just to please their English teachers. And Mr. Chino, I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah, this is just a slide that I wanted to share as to why reading is so important for all of us. As Miss Margaret said, it's super important at school. I'm seeing it also more now because I teach the older kids and kids who are applying to private high schools and college. They're all, they all have to write essays. So it's super important. It informs writing. It makes it, I always tell parents who come and ask me, what's your biggest advice to help my child improve? And it's to read. Frankly, that's what I always say. And I've seen it so many times in the years I've done this. The stronger readers almost always equate to the better writers. So that's why it's so important. The third thing is it gives kids an alternate pastime. So, when the devices are off, when Wi-Fi is down, oh no, or when they're sick of staring at screens, this is an alternate pastime, definitely. And it can be a family activity. I just wanted to share this picture. This is me way back, and this is my son. And as you can see, we're both reading. He's a toddler here. He's less than a year old. Of course, he's not reading. He's just looking at it. But as long as, ever since he was a child, we just exposed our kids to books. And, he's kind of reading Superman while I was reading, but it's just a good family activity. Lots of bonding involved there. So what we're going to do now, the second part of our agenda is we are going to talk about strategies that you can use, specific things that you can do today for your elementary, middle, and high school kids. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Miss Margaret, who'll talk about the younger kids.
All right, awesome. So let me quickly share my slide here for all of those visual learners. You can see where I'm going with all of these different ideas, and I will do my best to follow the bullet points as clearly as possible. But feel free, if you have any questions or comments as I'm going along, you can put them in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask those out loud. But the first thing that you want to do with young readers is build habits. Like anything that we do, reading takes practice, and they are not going to be great at it right off the bat. I have made my life all about reading and writing. It is my profession, it is my pastime, it's my community. And I was a struggling reader when I was younger. And I had two parents who were both writers and English teachers. So you can imagine how that went over in our house. But you learn how to build habits. And the easier that reading becomes because of those habits, the less intimidating it is, the more exciting it becomes, and the easier and easier it gets. So one of the things that you can do to build these habits with your beginning readers is to make sure that you are encouraging regular time and conducive space. And this can be a really big challenge because you're busy, your kids are busy, they're doing so many amazing things. But if your child is trying to fit in reading while they're driving to soccer practice and maybe their siblings are teasing them in the car and they haven't had their snack yet and all sorts of things like that, it's going to be really hard for them to focus on the words on the page because the words on the page are not going to be as interesting as annoying their sibling or asking for a snack or whatever it is, shiny object that's over in the corner. We're all easily distractible and kids especially. So just setting up a quiet time and space. I recommend not their bed. Bed, our brains instantly associate with sleep, hopefully. And so if your child has trouble staying focused or following along, if they're reading in a space where they usually do something like sleep, or maybe it's the same place where they usually play video games or something like that, it's not going to be as conducive to focusing on that book. Making sure that it's well lit is really, really important. Again, that the dimness can make us all sleepy. So well lit, easier on their eyes, also help keep them awake. Things like water nearby can also help. Instrumental music is also something that can help if you have a child who is easily distracted by other sounds that are going on in the house. I am that child, and so I often read with instrumental music going on in the background to kind of drown out my cat's howling or my husband burning something on the stove, just so I can focus on what I need to read. And setting as much consistency around time as you can. This, it's a bit of a wish list. Schedules can be all over the place, but making sure at least half an hour a day can really ramp up not only your child's reading ability, but their writing ability. And just making it a regular practice also means that there's more opportunity for it to be associated with positive and not negative. So that if it's something that's happening every day, they know it's happening every day. If one day they're in a mood and they're like, I don't want to, the next day they might be like, yeah, I'm down, I'm ready to do this. So it gives them the opportunity to work through whatever emotions they're bringing to that day and not associate it with their reading time. Recruiting reading allies can be a great strategy for your reluctant readers. Do they have a friend who loves to read? What books is that friend reading? Do they have a friend who also is a reluctant reader? Can you collaborate with those parents? Be like, we're both going to read Captain Underpants this month. But having it be more of a social activity. Reading can be very lonely, especially for younger children who like attention, who like to be in the thick of things, don't we all? So even just reading with them, not just reading out loud to them, but taking a minute for yourself, reading half an hour in the chair next to them. So it is not a solo activity, but more of a social one. And go where the books are. Like I mentioned before, we're really lucky to be in a vibrant literary community here in the Bay Area, and there's so much to take advantage of. So going to independent bookstores, those booksellers are going to have awesome recommendations for your kids about books that are out or coming out, things that they can get excited about. Librarians are superheroes, so going to them, asking for recommendations. This also gives kids a sense of ownership on what they're reading. They've picked it out. they have decided on it, and so they can want to read it more than a book that was handed to them and feels a little bit more like schoolwork. The next step after you've got a habit is making sure they're actually comprehending what's going on in the book. And this is a lifelong journey, but sometimes you might find that your kids the words are going in one ear and out the other. That's okay, it happens to all of us. But ways to encourage comprehension are to ask open-ended questions. Ask them what they think is going to happen next in the book. Ask them, what are the characters like? Ask them, what is interesting? And if you get that all too often, nothing, or I don't know, the key phrase is, well, go to the text. Open it up. Pick a page, pick a sentence. Have them go back to the text. Go back to the sentences. Be like, find something that describes the character. Find the answer in there. Another way to encourage comprehension is marginalia. Now, some people, like a lightning bolt might descend from the sky and hit me where I stand, but I will confidently say that it is okay to write in books. I know that is anathema to some, but it is okay to write in books. Or what I do, I use Post-it notes and I put my comments in books. And this is something I've done since I was younger. If you saw my middle school textbooks, you'd have a really good laugh because I was very sassy in the margins, being like, why are we learning this? What good is this? What does he mean by this? So they can even be sassy. They can even be angry. But if they are engaging with the text, responding to it by writing in the margins or writing on Post-its or writing on a separate sheet of paper, they are encouraging comprehension. A ruler can also be really handy for those of us who have trouble with those big blocks of text, just using it underneath the sentences, so as they move along, they can follow more clearly. And the last bit is just to encourage imagination around this. We are all different styles of learners, different styles of readers, and so part of encouraging children to read is encouraging them to find their particular reading style. So maybe after they've finished a chapter or finished a book, maybe they're ready to summarize it and they can just summarize it verbally for you. Awesome. Maybe they need to draw the character or draw a map of the world. Or maybe they need to act it out with action figures or clay or Legos or stuffies. Allowing imagination to enter and kinetic and tactile things can be a great way to kind of ignite a spark for a student who is feeling a little bit like reading is dull. And lastly, something I like to remind all of my learners and all of my parents that this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. So focus on lifelong learning. Like I said, I was a struggling reader. I was a struggling writer as well. Now I got stuff translated into Italian and Korean and all sorts of other languages, and have read my work at museums and festivals and things like that. But it's because this was a lifelong journey, not something that just one day clicked. So if they're struggling today, and they're struggling tomorrow, knowing that as long as they keep building those habits, as long as they keep at it, that they will get there. And as much as possible, though sometimes it can't be helped, sometimes people are just going to see reading as a punishment, and that's okay. Hopefully that will change as they open the book and get into it. But associating reading as a privilege, not a punishment, is something that we get to do, that we get to spend time doing. And one of the ways to do that is to keep a variety of books accessible Have them in your car. If you carry a purse or backpack, have them in a purse or backpack. Have them in all the rooms of your house in different drawers. Have books around, because there will come a time where the electronics have run out of batteries and everyone is just too bored and the world is about to end, and oh well, I guess I'll read. And so books can come to the rescue in that way. And also being open to the fact that this is about discovering a reading style for your child, which might not be the same as yours, which can be really frustrating. I cannot do audiobooks to save my soul. If you had me listen to an audiobook and try and tell you what happened in it, I would freeze. And I've gone to school for this. Whereas my husband, if you had him read a book, it would go in one ear, out the other. Audiobook, he's got it on lock. Everybody has a different style. And so some of this is just about discovering what works for them. Maybe ebooks are really easy for them to read. Maybe it makes them zone out. Maybe they need the tactileness of a physical book. Maybe they like audiobooks. Maybe they need structured timer method where you set a timer for 30 minutes. Maybe that makes it feel like punishment. So it's just like 30 minutes today, you've got to read this book. So just finding what style works for them. Right. And this is something that I could go on and on and on about, but I will go ahead and hand things over to Mr. Chino. Is there anything you wanted to add about anything I said about encouraging our younger learners?
I love the suggestion of using action figures, just because I'm a big action figure and comic fan, as you guys will soon find out. But yeah, I totally, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to build on what Margaret said about these strategies, because now we're going to talk about the older kids. So before anything else, please, if you have any questions, if you think of any questions, put it in the chat. Thank you, Svetlana, for putting your question. We'll address them at the end of the webinar. But if you remember something, or if you think of something, type away, and we are more than happy to answer them. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So these are for the older kids. So if you have a middle or high schooler, these are some of the things that I found to be effective for them. So the first thing is, now that they're middle schoolers, now that they're older, now that they're teenagers, they are, they have their own interests. They hang out more with friends, and what I would do is I would always be keen about what my teenager, my students, and my kids were interested in. And that's where I would kind of hook them into reading. So to give an example, if you were to ask your teen right now, or if we were to ask a teenager right now what they're doing, I would say more than 50% would probably say video games, a video game of some sort. Is that correct? So what I would do is I would buy books about video games. I know it's not literature. I know it's not, the things that we do at school. But for example, I have this book set. When we were here at Sentence Center, when we were still in person, I would leave books outside our lobby so that kids who were waiting for their parents could read. And this was the most popular book set that I had. It was a Minecraft, an unofficial novel about Minecraft, since that was the thing. As you can see, there used to be 6 books. Now there are 4. 2 of them, I don't know where they went, but they were so popular that, kids loved these books. And I would see kids who never picked up books, just at least try. They'd look at the covers first, the pictures, and then slowly but surely they would look at the text. So that's one thing I'd like to do. I like to do is I like to, ask the kids, what are you into right now? What are you doing? During the weekend? What keeps you occupied? And if they would say something video game related, then I would, think about books that have something to do with video games. One of the books that my son really loved, he's into video games, is called Ready Player One, which is also a movie. And it's all about video games, retro video games, modern video games. And he ate that book up because he loved the topic. So that's the first thing that you can do. If your kid's into sports, just like me, I often recommend Sports Illustrated. This is a magazine. This is nonfiction. I know this is Tom Brady. So if you like Tom Brady, then good. If you don't, sorry. But I love this, even as a kid growing up, because I loved the NBA. I was a big Bulls fan when Michael Jordan was in his heyday. And I'd read this every week when I got the chance. And it also got me into reading. And this is nonfiction. So we have fiction, nonfiction. So try to hook back. Try to go back to their interest. So let me go back to my screen. There we go. Okay. And by the way, everything that we're going to present, we are going to send in a handout. So not to worry. I'll go back and forth to the slide. So the second thing is, as Margaret also mentioned, other formats are helpful or can be helpful for kids. Not for all, but it's best to try. So for my kids, what worked for them, audiobooks, definitely. Some people can't listen to audiobooks, especially for prolonged periods of time, but they loved it. So just a quick story. The reason why, or the way they got into Harry Potter, was that we borrowed, those CDs, those big bulky CDs from the library. We borrowed like a 7-setter CD of Sorcerer's Stone. And on the way to LA, we were driving to Disneyland. We just popped it in the car, and it was the quietest, most peaceful ride ever, because they were just listening. They were riveted. In fact, when we got to LA, when we got to Anaheim, and we were there, kids, we're here at Disneyland. And they're like, wait, we want to finish this audiobook. And we were in the parking lot. Come on, let's go down. No, we want to finish. So that's one thing that really got them into writing. Now, ebooks is something that personally I can't really get myself into. I know a lot of younger kids do. My daughter right now, and these are pictures of her. I'll tell you about why I put her pictures down there in a bit. But she loves ebooks, and she and there was this one time, I was worried that she wasn't reading enough books anymore, because we would usually go to the library, to the Barnes and Noble, as you can see in this picture, and she would buy 2 or 3 books every week. And one time it just stopped, and I got worried, and I asked her, why aren't you reading anymore? And she said, oh, everything's online now. So she has her source though for ebooks, and that's where she reads. Watch movies. So movies are one good way to connect books and reading. So let me give you an example. And again, I'm going to shift to myself. One way to have your kids get hooked into reading is to pick one of these series. And we all know about Harry Potter. Okay, this is a 7-book series, 8 movie series. So if they're reluctant to read, maybe have them start by watching the movie first. And then if they love it, you can say, do you know where that came from? This came from here. And then maybe they can start to get curious. Maybe they can start to read. And then they can read book 2 and 3, all the way till 7. And then you watch the movies for 2, 3, and then you compare. So there's so many ways to do this. So I would pick like a book/movie series, so you've got them hooked. Okay. Other examples, Percy Jackson. Now, this is a very popular book series. There was a movie of The Lightning Thief. It wasn't very good from what I heard from my students, but the mere fact that they were talking about the book and the movie, that was awesome. And then it also got them to read book 2, before, and then other Rick Riordan books. That's how my kids got into. My kids also love The Golden Compass. Okay, and one way to determine whether the book has a movie tie-in is just look at the cover. So if you look at there, now a major motion picture. So you could definitely do that. A lot of Netflix series now are made from books. And if you can make that connection with them, who knows, maybe they'll pick it up. And finally, one of my kids' favorites, The Hunger Games. The first book was great. The second and third book, according to them, I'm just going through what they say, were long-ish. The movies were pretty exciting. This is pretty intense. So this is more for middle school / high school kids, not so much for elementary school, because the topic is kind of dystopian. Okay, so let me go back to my slide and talk about the others. Make personal connections. So Margaret was talking about, having conversations with them about the book. Yes, absolutely. Please do that. Like dinner table. Instead of just asking, what did you think about the Hunger Games? Maybe you can make a personal connection while saying, don't you feel like the hunger, when you play basketball or volleyball or capture the flag, don't you feel like it's kind of like Hunger Games? So you make those personal connections and you have them make it relevant to their lives. And finally, the reason why I have the pictures here is what I used to do as, when they were younger, and even now that they're older. We love bookstores. Any place that we would visit, whether, we would go on trips, we would go abroad, I would always look for the nearest bookstore. And I would take them when they're young. This is my daughter, Maya, when she was, oh my gosh, she's probably first grade then. And she's still wearing her school uniform. She used to go to a private school, and we would, right after school we would go to Barnes and Noble. That's what our thing was, and it's just a good place to hang out. She could pick books. The difference between a bookstore and a library is that in the bookstore, you have more recent books. You can see the covers displayed nicely. You have all these big pop-up posters. Sometimes if you go to a Barnes, there's a Starbucks there, so it's more homey and inviting. And if their eyes get tired, they can, when my kids were small, they would go to the Thomas the Train track and then just play around. So that's why we like comic stores. We also went to libraries, but for hours and hours of fun, we would prefer the bookstore. Would we buy anything after? Sure. Yeah, I would tell the kids, and this is also when they were growing up, I can spend, I whenever, if they wanted to buy a book, there was no limit, absolutely no limit to how much they could spend. If they gave me a stack of books and it cost over $100, I'd buy them for them instantly. But if it were like, candy, Robux, video games, that's when I put limits. But for books, I never put limits. And one thing also, comic stores. I'm a comic book fan. One thing that got my son, I don't know, my son, and maybe a little bit my daughter about to reading, was that I always like to go to comic book stores and just hang out there while my wife would go shopping in other stores, and my son would tag along. And this is one of the first books that I read as a child, Spider-Man. Now, some of you are thinking like, comics? My son is still reading comics. And I should stop him from reading comics. I would say I wouldn't stop, because this is for me, this is a piece of literature. If you look inside, okay, it's also quite text heavy, especially the older ones. Okay, and this is sort of my gateway into reading. And I would say, if you're concerned about, and I'm already answering one question, if you're already concerned about, too much comics, I would say maybe, pair it with a chapter book. So give your kid a graphic novel if he or she would like. and then say, okay, now you've read one, why not try this book too, which is kind of related, but it's a chapter book. So you don't prevent, just sort of add on. That would be my biggest tip for audiobooks. I mean, for comic books. So let me just go back and share that slide once again. Okay, so those are my 5 tips for middle schoolers and high schoolers. Read anywhere, read at the park. That's my daughter now. She's like I said, she's a teenager, and she prefers audiobooks, but she still reads a lot, which I am very thankful for. Okay, so those are my tips for middle schoolers. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to just show the handout, and of course share this in my in the chat. So you'll have that in the chat. Let me just go ahead and share that here, and I will share my screen. And we also have a special guest that I would like to introduce in 1 second. So this is the handout that you just received. It's a presentation summary, why reading is so vital, and things you can do today, elementary school, middle and high school, and some little recommendations at the end. And I'll talk about that in a bit. But before that, I would like to introduce my daughter, Maia. You just saw her picture, and she is she's a busy high school junior, but I was able to twist her arm for her to come. No, I'm just kidding. I was able to ask her, and she agreed very nicely, just to talk about her as a reader, and what really got her into reading, and how she developed that good habit. So, hello, Maia. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How is everyone?
Everyone is well. Everyone is well, and we have 4 parents here. Miss Margaret, whom I don't know if you met her before, but Maia is she's been part of Sentence Center for the longest time. In fact, she writes a lot of our essay models. So my main question, and Margaret, you can ask her as well, is how did you get to be such a strong reader or a good reader? What made you love reading so much that it's now a habit?
That is a super good question. So, I mean, I think I started reading like as a normal kid does, like parents make you read, give you books, make you go to the library, pick out books that you want to read. And I'd say that's the most important part, is really finding books that interests you. Like, don't read anything that you don't seem to like, or like, for example, if I got a book and the first few pages weren't interesting, like I wouldn't force myself to read it. That's like a super important thing, because I absolutely hate reading anything that doesn't interest me. So for example, like nonfiction books, like I probably have never read a nonfiction book willingly in my life. So it's all like fiction, like fantasy. Lately, I've been really loving like romance, like whatever like floats your boat. I'd say just tell your child or whoever you want to start reading to read what interests them, and to like pick out a topic and maybe explore a few topics. Like there's a lot these days. There's like sports. And if your child's also like on social media, like TikTok, they have a lot of good recommendations. There's like this whole like trend called book talk now. And so I found a lot of good books off of book talk. Another thing is, but when I was younger, obviously, like technology, I didn't really use it as much. So I'd always be reading hard copy books, and then I'd have to go to the library or like Barnes and Noble and find like a physical copy of a book, which could be really difficult. Libraries don't always have what you want to read, or you probably don't have the time to go to Barnes and Noble and make like a trip, or you don't want to order it like on Amazon. So I think a really good thing is online books. If you want to expose your child to that, I really enjoy reading online. It's super easy for me. Like in class, if I have some free time, I'll pull out like an online copy of a book I'm reading, or if I'm on the train or something, I can easily pull it up on my phone. And that way, even though, because I'm super busy, I have a lot of homework, extracurriculars, I can still find like a few minutes every day to read something that I like. So that's, I'd say, how it started and how I've kept the habit going. And obviously I used to read a lot more, but I still find the time to do so now. So
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Maya. That was great. I didn't know about the TikTok stuff. I thought TikTok was only for food recipes.
no, there's so much now.
Margaret, do you have any questions for Maya, or did you want to ask her anything?
What are the books you're reading right now that you would recommend?
Currently, let's see. There was this one book that I saw on TikTok too. It's called Atlas 6. And it was released like a few years ago. It's really like magic focused. So there are like a bunch of kids and they're focused on like magic training, and it kind of follows their lives. And it's really funny because the sequel, the second book, actually came out yesterday. So I just downloaded it online and I'm really excited to start reading it. But I've been looking forward to getting to read that soon. So I'd say that's what's on my to be read so far.
Nice. Awesome.
Awesome. One last question. Do you have a memory, or do you remember anything about, when you were a kid? One thing that kind of helped you get into reading, or one thing that you did that now you're like, oh, I'm a better reader because of it.
I'd say I do have a lot of memories of going to the public library near my house, South City Library, and I think you or mom or someone would just bring us there, and I would sit in like the little comfy chairs in the reading section and just pick out a book and start reading. And I'd be there for a while, actually. Like I would sit there and just read the book as usual. And after maybe like 20-30 minutes, if I was really into it, and I was like, oh, this is really good, like I want to finish and continue reading this, I would take it with me, check it out, bring it home. But if it was something that I was like, I don't know about this, I would put it back, go browse the shelves, see something, another interesting cover or like a cool title that I would be in the mood to like look at, and then just take a look at that one too. So for me, I do like a lot of browsing to find something that I would really love to read, because if not, then I would not be able to make it like 2 or 3 chapters in.
Okay. Wow. Thank you very much. And Maya still does that, by the way. We still go to the library. We still go to Barnes and Noble, and she's very meticulous when she's picking books, which is good. She's very selective about what she consumes as a reader, which is awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much. If you can, I don't know if you have a lot of homework, but if you can't stick around, some of these parents may have questions for you. But really quickly, I just wanted to share this screen again. So all of you have this handout. And like I said, it's just a summary of what we talked about today. Some of the examples that you heard will be in the podcast recording if you want to revisit. So other things we recommend, you can subscribe to our weekly Substack newsletter. It's a website, and it's also a weekly newsletter that Margaret curates and does an awesome job, by the way. And she works hard every week to make sure that we get student samples, great student models there. She recaps what we do in class every week, and she also gives reading and writing tips. And I think the pinned topic for our newsletter is our fall reading list. So if you need more recommendations, you can click on that website, and also subscribe to our weekly newsletter so that you get more book recommendations. You can listen to our podcast. This recording will be there pretty soon, and any other future webinars will be there soon. And also tell your friends. If you found this useful, maybe they will too. And finally, join a book club. So we are, and I'm also going to talk to Margaret about this, about perhaps having a book club, because it's consistent with what she said about reading buddies. So if you have access to any book club, teen book club, kids book clubs, you can join them, or have your kids join them so that they can get excited about it. Okay, so I have shared that. any questions. So now this is our dialogue part. Feel free to ask me, Margaret, Maya, anything and everything about reading. We could go on, like I said, we could go on for days about this. We'll try to answer every question you have. But before that,
if we could go ahead and jump into Svetlana's question. So if it's all right, I'm just going to read it out loud. That she says, her house and car are full of books, but she needs to work on the correct books. And first of all, awesome. I love hearing that you're not only your home, but your car are full of books. That is a wonderful place to start. Just to get an idea so that I can make my answer the most useful, what do you mean by correct books? Like, are you trying to get your reader to read more chapter books, or are you just looking for something to challenge them?
Yes, I think more to like build different vocabulary, because I know that my son struggles with spelling, and I know he even went to his school library. I'm like, what? And now that I'm paying attention, I didn't realize it. Goes, yeah, they're all those comic graphic novels. And so there's like hardly any chapter books. He the difficulty, I guess, is that also he would get in the past, he would get books that he would finish like a book in a less than a day. He wants a series. Great, he's reading, but they're so low, like he's a high reader, yet there is that comprehension is not there. And the spelling, I know it's going now with writing, but it's like the spelling, he struggles with the same writing. And I don't know how to get him to get the higher level books that he would really interest on, that he could read, not just like finish and then there's no comprehension.
Yeah. So graphic novels and comics are great, but they are fast. They're speedy. And sometimes you need a bigger meal. So one strategy is, and I have an example here, I have two books, The Plain Janes, which is a graphic novel, and First Day on Earth. And these are both by the same author. This is a chapter book. This is a graphic novel. And Cecil Castellucci, she's actually a Los Angeles author who's absolutely wonderful, has a ton of books out there. Some of them are graphic novels, some of them are chapter books, some of them are for middle school, some of them are for high school. And so a good place to start is looking at those graphic novels or comics that he devoured too fast to comprehend, and just searching online the author's name and seeing if they published anything that is a chapter book. And that way you're going to the library with a plan and asking the librarian for this, or the bookseller, this is what I want. Another good strategy for chapter books, you're saying he wants a series, he wants something he can really dig his teeth into. We are in kind of the golden age of young adult series. It used to be that authors were kind of expected to publish one book, one and done, or maybe there would be like 4 years and you would get a new one, maybe. But now you're supposed to enter a publisher with like 3 books on your mind. So when he goes to pick up those books, asking the librarian, asking the bookseller what series they have available. What age is your child right now?
Sorry, he's 12. He just turned 12.
Yes. Oh, awesome. Happy birthday. So off the top of my head, the Warriors series, not about Steph Curry, unfortunately. It's about different tribes of cats, is wildly popular right now, and has lots of great vocabulary words in it, lots of action, and so many books. Like, I don't know how this author does it. So many. Some of them are graphic novels, some of them are chapter books. So that's one strategy. Mr. Chino, anything you wanted to bring in on that?
Yeah, so I think along the same lines, Aaron is, I've seen Aaron in class. He's enthusiastic. He's such an engaged kid. He loves playing games. He loves that start of the class. So maybe get him something, maybe get him something to do with games, not necessarily computer games, but just any type of game type of or books that revolve around that subject of playing games. Chess, maybe, if he's into that, or any type of game. And then you can look up the subject, the topic, and then some book recommendations can be given. But yeah, I think, like I said, comic books, graphic novels are good gateway, but try to look for books with the same topic and of the same author at a higher level. Mm-hmm. So, but thank you for asking that. That's great. And please send our regards to Aaron. And we have a question. Where do we get good audiobooks? For us, it was in the local library. We would, like I said, we'd borrow those big folders with like 8 CDs in them. That was way back. And now you can just download. The most popular site is audible.com. It's an Amazon website, so you could also do that. And Margaret, you also had one.
Libro is one you can use. I just, because I am a writer and we have some with Amazon. There are Audible adjacent platforms that aren't through Amazon that you can use. Libro is one of them. Your local library should have downloadable ebooks. And I believe the system, I can check on my phone right now, is now rebranded as Libby. Yes. So if you have a library card, you input your number, you can get ebooks and you can get audiobooks. And also there is another program called Hoopla, which should also be free as well, where you can get audiobooks, ebooks, and comics and graphic novels. And you can also do Kobo, which is an e-reader that allows you to support local independent bookstores.
Great. Maia, do you still listen to a lot of audiobooks?
Not so much, no. I'm more of a visual person, so I prefer reading a book, but I do remember listening to audiobooks when I was younger, in the car, like on the way to school, and I thought that was really great. But unfortunately, I don't listen to them as much. Okay.
Yeah, I was just telling the group, I'm not a big audiobook person. I'm more of I like podcasts though. That kind of, you can also introduce your kids to podcasts, and hopefully that gets them into audiobooks as well.
I also included in the chat, while you guys are thinking of any final questions, a link to that Substack page that has our fall reading recommendations. We'll have our winter reading recommendations coming up soon. And we pull those not just from the teachers at Sentence Center, but also from our students, so that not just hearing our out of touch ancient opinions on what to read, but the current hot new books. So that should be coming up as well.
Well, if there aren't any questions, I guess this is a good place to end. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully this was helpful. So good night. Thank you so much, Maia, and I'll see you in a few minutes. And
thank you.
And thank you
Svetlana,
all for coming. Good night.
Good night, everyone.